She was just a shy bakery girl. He was a cold, untouchable billionaire. But when a violent hostage crisis threw them together, Lena Hartman and Julian Cross discovered a love forged in chaos, courage, and sacrifice. From trembling fear to fierce loyalty, from narrow escapes to the rawest confessions, their journey will grip your heart and leave you breathless. Who is this quiet girl who captured a billionaire's soul and risked everything to protect him? Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories like this one. Lena Hartman had never stepped foot in a ballroom like this. The chandeliers sparkled above her like constellations trapped in crystal, casting fractured light across the marble floors and gilded columns of the Ellington Hotel. She tugged nervously at the hem of her too-tight black uniform, the starched fabric clinging uncomfortably to her frame as she balanced a tray of delicate fruit tarts and champagne flutes. The gala was for some tech foundation fundraiser, though Lena barely knew the details. All she knew was this shift paid triple, and she needed every penny if she wanted to keep her little brother in his special school. The guests drifted around in tuxedos and couture gowns, laughing softly, their perfume and cologne blurring into a dizzying haze. Lena kept her eyes down, weaving through the crowd like a ghost. She didn't belong here, not with her worn-out sneakers hidden beneath the floor-length apron or the second-hand lipstick her coworker had lent her to look less tired. She just had to survive the night. No mistakes, no spills. Her hands trembled as she neared the VIP tables. That's when she saw him. Julian Cross. Even without the whispers circling him like perfume, she would have recognized him. Sharp jaw, storm gray eyes, and the infamous expression that made Wall Street hold its breath. He wasn't just powerful, he commanded the room without trying. Lena had only seen him in Forbes spreads and viral interviews, but seeing him in person made her heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with nerves. She tried not to look directly at him as she passed, but fate had other plans. A sudden bump from a passing guest sent her tray tilting. One glass wobbled, then toppled, crashing onto the edge of Julian's table and spilling golden champagne across a pristine white tablecloth. Gasps rippled. Lena froze. Her breath caught in her throat as every eye turned her way. I'm so sorry, she whispered, already reaching for a napkin. But before she could blink, the entire room exploded. A deafening crash split the air. The main doors burst open. Armed men in black masks and tactical vests flooded in, barking orders, raising rifles. Screams erupted. Plates shattered. The crowd ducked and scattered, but Lena was rooted to the spot. A gloved hand seized her arm, yanking her upright. "What the hell?" she cried, but the cold press of a gun to her back silenced her. Her limbs stiffened, lungs paralyzed. "On your knees," one of the gunmen barked to the crowd. Another grabbed her wrist and dragged her to the center of the room. "Found her lingering by Cross's table," the man growled. "This one's twitchy, maybe wired." Lena's mouth opened, but no words came out. Wired? What were they talking about? She was a server, not some agent. Her heart pounded like it wanted to burst free from her chest. "Strip her," the leader said sharply. "Check for bugs." "No, please," she cried, twisting in their grip, but it was no use. And then everything stopped. "I wouldn't," came a voice, calm and deadly. Julian Cross stepped forward, his eyes locked onto the man holding her. "Touch her again," he said, "and whatever you're hoping to gain tonight disappears." The gunman hesitated, thrown by the steel in Julian's tone. Lena stared, breath hitching, stunned that this untouchable billionaire was now her only shield. He wasn't cowering like the others. He was standing tall, defiant. Julian moved closer, placing himself between Lena and the barrel of the rifle. His broad frame blocked her from the threat completely. And for one surreal second, with the world collapsing into panic and chaos, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because she had the power, but because someone was willing to use theirs to protect her. She didn't even know his name 5 minutes ago. But now, her life might depend on him. Lena's knees hit the marble floor hard as one of the masked men shoved her down beside Julian, the rough rope biting into her wrists as he tied them both back to back. Her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps, her body trembling uncontrollably. She could still feel the heat of Julian's body just moments ago as he'd stepped between her and the gun. Now he was behind her, close enough that she could feel the rise and fall of his breath, steady and calm despite the chaos unraveling around them. "You okay?" he asked quietly, his voice low and impossibly calm. Lena nodded stiffly, though her throat was too tight to speak. She wasn't okay. Her entire body screamed with fear, her heart galloping like a wild animal inside her chest. But somehow, the sound of his voice anchored her, gave her something solid to cling to. "They think I'm with you," she whispered after a beat, trying to keep her voice from cracking. "They think I'm some kind of spy." Julian gave a soft, humorless chuckle. "They think everyone's a spy. Paranoia is a side effect of desperation." There was a pause as a crash echoed from the far end of the room. Someone resisting? Someone screaming, and then silence again. Lena swallowed hard, the scent of blood and champagne thick in the air. "They're not here for money, are they?" she asked. "No," Julian replied grimly. "They want access, my company's data. Someone sent them, and I intend to find out who." Lena's fingers twitched behind her. She barely knew this man, and yet the resolve in his voice felt like something she could trust. She glanced at the nearest gunman pacing just feet away, weapon slung low. If they were going to survive this, she had to be more than a scared waitress. She had to think. "What are you doing?" she whispered, noticing his fingers subtly moving behind his back. "Testing the tension in the rope," he murmured. "I can loosen it. Might take a few minutes. Stay still." She tried not to flinch every time the leader barked orders into his radio. Tried not to imagine what would happen if they decided she was useless. Or worse, useful in other ways. "You've done this before?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. Julian didn't answer right away. Then, in a low murmur, "I've been in boardrooms with more bloodthirsty men than these. But no, not like this." The unexpected honesty made her heart stutter. She twisted slightly to glance at him over her shoulder. He wasn't watching the gunman, he was watching her. Studying her like she was the variable he hadn't accounted for. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "You could have stayed quiet, let them strip me, they wouldn't have touched you." His expression shifted, just a flicker, but it was enough. "Because I've seen people used as pawns my whole life, and I've been too many things in this world, but never that kind of coward." Lena blinked. The air around them seemed to thrum with something strange and electric. This man, this billionaire with a reputation for ruthless efficiency, was here, with her, choosing to risk himself. A gunman approached suddenly, shouting something about moving the hostages. Julian tensed behind her. The rope between them tightened slightly as he leaned forward. "New plan," he murmured. "I'm going to start a distraction. When I say now, I need you to run. Can you do that?" Lena hesitated. Every instinct told her to freeze, to stay small and unseen. But she'd already been dragged into the light, already been exposed, and maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to go back into hiding. "Yes," she breathed. Julian didn't smile, but his voice softened. "Good, you're stronger than you think." She didn't feel strong, but with his voice in her ear and the warmth of his back against hers, she felt something close to it. Something fierce, something alive. For the first time that night, she believed they might make it out. Together. The moment Julian whispered now, the world snapped into chaos. He surged forward, shoulder slamming into the closest gunman's side, knocking the man off balance. A chair clattered to the ground. Lena launched herself up, legs scrambling beneath her, as she bolted toward the ballroom's side door, her hands still bound, her breath caught in her throat, heart hammering so loud it drowned out the shouts and gunfire behind her. But she didn't get far. A hand like iron clamped around her arm, yanking her back so violently her feet left the floor. She crashed against the wall with a sharp cry. The masked leader loomed over her, fury twisting his face behind his black hood. He pressed the cold barrel of a gun to her temple. "You're not going anywhere," he hissed. Lena froze. Her body trembled uncontrollably, muscles locked by fear. Her vision blurred, not from pain but from sheer, helpless terror. She barely heard Julian's voice roar behind her. "Let her go!" He was charging, a blur of fury and desperation. Another attacker tried to block him, but Julian plowed through with brute force, landing a solid punch that sent the man crumpling. The leader spun toward the sound, just as Julian lunged again. They collided. The gun went off with a thunderous crack, the shot slicing through the air, missing by inches. Lena fell, her head slamming against the marble. Everything slowed. She heard distant shouting, orders barked, glass shattering, a woman screaming, but it all felt underwater. Pain bloomed at the base of her skull. She tried to move, to push herself up, but her limbs refused. All she could do was blink, and through that haze, she saw Julian fighting like a man possessed. Every movement was precise, furious, a storm of fists and elbows and shouts. But there were too many of them. One attacker hit Julian hard in the ribs, sending him stumbling. Another grabbed him by the collar, slamming him into a table. Lena's heart seized. Somewhere, police sirens wailed, growing louder. Then, a new sound. Orders shouted through megaphones. The authorities were closing in, but it wasn't fast enough. The leader grabbed her again, dragging her upright by the shoulders. "You're my insurance," he snarled. "He cares too much. He won't let me lose." He pressed the muzzle of his gun back against her head, turning her toward the center of the ballroom like a living shield. Julian froze mid-step. Blood trickled down the side of his face, his chest heaving, but his eyes locked on hers, wild, terrified, furious. "Let her go," Julian said, quieter this time, but far more lethal. "You want me? I'm right here. She's got nothing to do with this." "She's everything now," the leader said with a sneer, "because you made her something." Julian's hands lifted slightly, but his expression didn't waver. "You kill her, you lose your only leverage. The second she drops, you're dead." For one fragile second, doubt flickered across the leader's face. He faltered. Julian seized the moment. "The police are seconds away. You feel that vibration in your boot? That's the drone camera above you. You're live right now. This is your last chance to walk out of here with a heartbeat." The leader's grip tightened on Lena. She could feel the tremor in his arm, the hesitation. Her own heart beat so hard she thought it might shatter her ribs. She didn't dare speak, didn't dare move. Her eyes never left Julian's. Then, without warning, the leader shoved her away. She stumbled and collapsed to the floor. Another shot fired, wild, panicked. Lena covered her head as she hit the marble again, pain flaring through her shoulder. She thought it was over, but then arms were around her, strong, warm, familiar. "Julian, I've got you," he whispered, voice ragged with breathlessness. "I've got you." She clung to him, sobbing, her body trembling uncontrollably. Around them, police stormed in, shouting orders, tackling the last of the attackers. Flashing lights bathed the ballroom in red and blue, and Lena buried her face in Julian's chest as the world spiraled into motion again. But in that one still space, his arms around her, his heartbeat against her cheek, she felt safe again. Not just safe, chosen. The following days passed in a blur of headlines, phone calls, and hollow, echoing silence. Lena tried to return to normal, though she wasn't quite sure what normal was anymore. Her shifts at the bakery resumed. Early mornings kneading dough, arranging croissants behind fogged glass, avoiding questions from curious customers who recognized her face from the news. She kept her head down, her smile tight. She told herself it was over, that she could just fade back into the background like she'd always done. But every night she woke in a cold sweat, Julian's voice echoing in her ears. "You're stronger than you think." She missed him. Desperately. Illogically. Painfully. Which made no sense, she told herself. She'd only known him for a handful of hours. Hours filled with gunfire and chaos and fear. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. And yet she couldn't forget the way he'd looked at her when the world had been crumbling. Like she was the only thing that mattered. She tried not to check the news. But his name was everywhere. Julian Cross, the hero CEO. He gave statements to the press, attended follow-up briefings with law enforcement, and managed to keep his company steady despite the assault. The headlines painted him as untouchable, cold, focused. But Lena knew better. That afternoon, the bakery was unusually quiet. Sunlight filtered through the front windows, casting warm stripes across the wooden counter. Lena stood wiping down the display case, hands moving mechanically, mind drifting again. Then the bell above the door chimed. She didn't look up at first, but something, some instinct, made her turn. Julian stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the golden light outside. He wasn't in a suit this time. No designer armor. Just jeans, a navy sweater, and the tired look of someone who hadn't slept in days. His dark hair was slightly messy, like he'd driven here with one hand tangled in it the entire way. Lena froze, her heart slammed against her ribs. He took a step forward. "I've been looking for you." She set down the cloth slowly, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why?" Julian hesitated, something flickering behind his eyes. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. She shook her head. You're safe now. You don't need me. That's where you're wrong. His voice was quiet but firm. I haven't been able to sleep, not because of what happened. God knows I've seen worse. But because I walked away without knowing if you were okay. Without telling you that? You saved me too. Lena blinked. Julian, he stepped closer. You were terrified, but you stayed, you trusted me, and I can't forget that. Her throat tightened. We come from different worlds. I don't care about worlds, he said. I care about you. Before she could respond, the bell chimed again. The bakery door slammed open with a jarring crash. 3 men stormed in, sharp suits and sharper expressions. Lena's blood ran cold. She recognized the man in the center instantly, the masked leader, now unmasked, but just as dangerous. Julian's body moved before she even had time to scream. He shoved her behind him, his frame tense and protective. I knew you'd come looking for her, the man sneered. You made it easy. Julian's jaw clenched. What do you want? What I've always wanted, leverage. The 2 henchmen lunged. Julian struck first, catching one in the jaw, then twisting to block the second. Lena stumbled backward, heart pounding, her breath coming in gasps. Suddenly, rough hands grabbed her from behind. She let out a choked scream as cold metal pressed into her ribs. The leader dragged her close, arm locked around her waist. Julian froze mid-punch, turning sharply. Let her go, he growled. You want her? The man taunted. Then come get her. Lena's body trembled. Her mind screamed. But something deeper, something fierce rose up. And before she could talk herself out of it, she slammed her heel down on the man's foot, twisted with all her strength, and broke free. Julian was there in a flash, fists flying, the room exploding into movement. Police sirens wailed again in the distance. But this time, Lena wasn't waiting to be saved. This time, she was fighting too. The second attack shattered any illusions Lena still held about slipping quietly back into her old life. In the days that followed, her face was plastered across news channels, tabloids, and social media feeds. Brave bakery girl saves billionaire. Cross and Hartman, a bond forged in blood. Headlines screamed romance, survival, scandal, but none of them knew the truth. The sleepless nights, the tremors in her hands, the way she flinched every time a door slammed. Julian brought her to his penthouse, not because she asked, but because he refused to let her face any more danger alone. At first, she resisted. She didn't belong in his world of floor-to-ceiling glass and curated elegance. But something about the way he quietly handed her a warm mug of tea, the way he didn't press when she sat in silence for hours, made her feel safe, not caged. Just held. One night, Lena stood by the massive window overlooking the city, the lights blinking like far-off stars. She wore a soft robe he'd left folded on the bed, her hair still damp from a bath. She hugged herself, eyes searching the skyline for answers she couldn't name. Behind her, Julian approached with 2 glasses of wine. He moved without the stiffness she'd seen on TV, without the armor of power he wore in public. Just a man, tired and raw. He handed her a glass, and their fingers brushed, electric and quiet. They sat together on the low sofa, the hum of the city seeping through the glass. For a while, they said nothing. Then Julian asked, "Do you regret it?" Lena blinked. "Regret what?" He traced the rim of his glass with one finger. "Letting me in. Letting this happen." She exhaled, her voice soft. "I was scared. I still am. But no, I don't regret it. Not a single second." He turned to her, eyes dark and shining with emotion. "I never thought I'd find someone who looked at me and didn't see a price tag. But you," he shook his head, "you looked at me like a man, not a company, not a scandal, just me." Lena leaned forward slightly, forehead resting against his. "And I never thought anyone would choose me, not for anything." Julian's hand cupped her cheek. "I choose you," he whispered, "every day, every time." They kissed then, slow, hesitant at first, and then all-consuming. It wasn't about desire, it was about survival. About finding something steady to hold on to in a world that had tried to rip them apart. That night, she fell asleep in his arms, heart finally quiet. But it wasn't the end. The attacks weren't random. Julian's enemies hadn't vanished. So the next morning, he made a choice. He summoned his top security team, his closest legal advisors, and laid out a plan. He would expose everything: the corporate espionage, the betrayal within his board, the syndicate that had tried to destroy him. He didn't care what it cost. He only cared that Lena could walk into any room in the city and feel safe. Lena stood beside him the whole way. She wasn't the girl hiding behind an apron anymore. She'd seen death, stared it in the face, and lived to feel love. Now, she was part of the fight. The reckoning came fast and loud. Arrests, depositions, cameras, but Julian never let go of her hand. When it was over, truly over, they stood on his balcony, watching the sunrise. The city glittered below in shades of golden blush. Lena leaned into his side, his arms snug around her shoulders. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered. "I was just a bakery girl. And now—" Julian turned to her, lifting her chin gently. "Now you're the woman I can't live without," he said. "You're the woman who reminded me what it means to feel alive." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't from fear. "Are we really safe now?" she asked. Julian nodded slowly. "Safe and together." As the morning light poured over them, Lena rested her head against his chest, the steady beat of his heart anchoring her. For the first time, she wasn't running, wasn't hiding. She was home. Life lesson from the story. Sometimes the most extraordinary love stories are born not in comfort, but in chaos. Lena and Julian came from opposite worlds, one shaped by wealth and power, the other by survival and selflessness. Yet when everything fell apart, they discovered something more powerful than status, fear, or danger: connection. This story teaches us that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to trust someone, to stand your ground, to choose love in the face of fear. Lena was a quiet girl with nothing but grit and heart, and Julian was a man hardened by betrayal and responsibility. But together, they proved that healing can begin in the most unlikely places, and that real strength is often found in vulnerability. It also reminds us that no one is truly invisible. You don't need a title or fortune to matter. All it takes is a moment of bravery, a voice that won't be silenced, and someone willing to see you as you are. In a world that moves too fast and forgets too easily, choosing to protect each other, to show up, and to love honestly, that is what makes us human. So wherever you are in life, whether you feel overlooked or overwhelmed, remember, your story matters. And maybe, just maybe, the person who sees your worth is closer than you think. Let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more powerful, emotional stories just like this one. Your support means the world.